Wow, my hair. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Midweek Message for this week. Uh, well, it's Epiphany, and I hope that you enjoyed your holiday times and that it was a wonderful and beautiful time for you. Okay, uh, I want to discuss during Epiphany tide. So you're thinking, oh, Epiphany was January 6th. What are you talking about? Well, actually, in the church year, we stay in Epiphany tide or this time of Epiphany until we hit Lent. And so this is a time of following the light of and it starts there is this beautiful in the stories that we hear over the course of the Sundays between now and Lent, we hear a focus on light. So, it starts with the light of the star, of course, and the Magi following the star. And we call that Epiphany, and we think of that as Epiphany, but that's not the only Epiphany. Of course, knowing in a more generic term what the word means, we know that it's something that there are many, many epiphanies or revelations or moments in the Bible that where where people realize something or God reveals God's self in a certain way. So in that more generic sense, we look for epiphanies throughout our stories, and there is again this focus on light. So yes, we start with the star, and then there is the baptism of Jesus, where there is what's called a theophany, which is a 25-cent word for God revealing God's self, and and saying, "This is my son, my beloved, in whom I am pleased." Pay attention to him, and people experience this light and this manifestation, this presence of God. Um, so there are several moments like that. We end up, as we all know, with the theophany of the disciples and Jesus on the mountaintop, and they see Moses and Elijah, and again have this moment of God. Um, Sorry, got to get a Kleenex. Got a little cold. Um, Revealing God's self and in light, and so there's this beautiful focus that we see and that we start to follow. But one thing I would like you to do is to as you think about those stories and you think about the light that is revealed to us through these various revelations or epiphanies, I want you to see what God is doing and see how people respond to what God is doing. So God brings light, and in the darkness that we live in during this time of year, the epiphany light of the star makes perfect sense because the sun's going down at 4:30 or 4:45, and so we have a lot more darkness than we do light at this time of year. And that kind of light. So, because I know a lot of times when I think of light, I think of the sunlight, but there is this beautiful starlight, and that star is something that the Magi followed. And when you go out and you look in our dark, dreamy, quiet time in January, and you look at the stars, that is that is a beautiful light to follow. So there are many manifestations, just as there are many manifestations of God revealing God's self. There are also different various manifestations of light. And that starlight, I think, is a particularly appropriate one for us northerly winter folk. And it's certainly one that I can relate to. So that starlight in that dream time, that this quiet time that we're in, which I actually so appreciate, where the world is covered in a blanket of snow and things quiet down a bit and slow down a bit. I know I need this time. I don't know about you. Lots of people say, "Oh, I hate the snow. I want to go south where it's warm." Well, I actually love the snow. I love this quiet, blanketed, dreamy time. And I do think it gives us a quiet and a peace that makes it more possible to follow that light, follow that star, follow the various ways that God reveals God's self to us. And this is a time that I don't know about you, but this is a time that I really need, that time where it is quieter and it is a little bit more possible for me to hear God. So, God reveals God's self in those 3 stories that I just quickly touched upon, the 2 theophanies and the following of the star. God is revealing God's self in time and space to people, and what always strikes me about those stories is the love and care and intention that you see. So God is trying to show us something. God is trying to help. God is trying to, in some way, reveal a better way for us to live, a better way for us to think and exist within God's, within the commonwealth of God, but certainly within the realm of God's love. And then people's response is, of course, the next thing. We have all kinds of ways of responding to God. In all 3 of those stories, in all of the stories that we're going to be reading in Epiphany, you see the love of God through Jesus. You see the love of God in general for creation, for all people. I mean, amazing, isn't it, that it's Zoroastrian astrologers, the Magi, people who interpreted dreams. These are the people, and they also are called by God and loved by God. And so they come to this foreign land to worship a foreign child, to see for themselves what God is doing. It's a beautiful story, and a story that reminds us of how big God's love is. It's certainly bigger than what we're capable of, and yet it's something that we can aspire to, isn't it? So as we move through Epiphany, I want to help you to, and I would ask you to think and consider God's devotion to us and our response as also one of devotion. And devotion is an old fashioned word, but I am telling you, it is one of my favorites because it indicates the kind of love, the little things that you do, or the big things that you do when you really truly love someone or something. Um, Acts of devotion. And I don't mean like the penitential Lenten acts of like contrition. I'm talking about things that happen as a response to love. I can't tell you how many things that my children or Terry do that bring me joy because they're just little ways of saying that they love me. And I try very hard to do little acts of devotion back to show them that I love them and I am invested in them and I'm interested in them and they are the light of my life, my Terry and those girls. Those things in our lives that prompt that kind of a response are so beautiful. And devotion to me is so beautiful because it is so other centric. It is centered on the object that you love. So when I talk about the devotion of God towards creation and the world and towards us, that's what I'm driving at. That kind of incredible love that is about the other and wants the best for the other person. And I would ask you during this Epiphany time to consider finding ways to do that. Find ways to love God back. Find ways to show your love for other people or creation. There are so many ways that, and devotion is so beautiful because it is all about the other. It is all about the the object of your love. It is all about your beloved. And that is such a life-giving thing. I always tell my kids when they're sad, go do something kind for someone else. You know why? Because it gets you out of your own head. I mean, it's just a really simple, so it's almost axiomatic. If they are feeling sad, I'm like, well, go do something nice for somebody. Go, go do something. And because it also gives you a sense of agency, doesn't it? It gives you a sense of your own empowerment. Okay, this terrible thing happened, or I feel really blue, or whatever it is. But I can make cookies for somebody, or I can call one of my friends, or I can do something that brings joy to someone else. And that is such a life-giving thing. No matter how bad it is, there's something good I can do in this world. I still have agency in this world. I'm still able to make someone else happy. And that really is the golden rule, isn't it? Treating people the way you wish you were being treated. And as you do that, you bring that, or, that is the sort of love that you give out. And I do believe that it makes a difference. For one thing, it'll probably help you if you are feeling like people are being unkind to you to put your foot down and say, no, actually, I want you to treat me like this. And it also helps you to say, I can put one foot in front of the other because I can do something kind for someone else. Our stories are all about that, God's kindness and love and intention towards us and our response and the people back then, their response and the response that I hope that we have now. So in this dreamy, quiet time where sometimes we do feel blue, I know they talk about the January blues. Yeah, sure, we have those, but and we have seasonal affective disorder and all of those great things. On the other hand, we also have some agency in this world, and we have the experience of love in our lives, not just from God, but from each other in our community at church and in the community around us, and we can put that love out there. So that's what I would ask you to do. And even if it's just a little tiny thing, do it. It'll make you feel better and it will bring joy to someone else. And it is a response to God's love for us. And I think that's a very powerful thing, too. So happy Epiphany Tide. We'll continue to explore this. So until next weekend, as always, in this together with you, Reverend Stephanie signing off.